The great hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with tension. Emperor Valdris sat on his golden throne, his 6 eyes glowing red with anger. Around him, his top generals and admirals stood in perfect rows. They had come to discuss the human problem. Admiral Korath stepped forward. He was tall and blue, with arms that reached almost to the ground. His voice was deep and serious. Your Majesty, the humans have gone too far. They ignore our laws. They make deals with species that belong to us. They steal our trade routes. The Emperor's claws scratched against his throne. For 800 years, the Galactic Empire had ruled over 847 star systems. No one had ever dared to challenge them like this. No one except these strange creatures from a small blue planet called Earth. Tell me about their latest actions, Valdris said. Korath activated a hologram in the center of the room. It showed star maps with red dots marking human activities. 3 months ago, human traders arrived at Zelon Prime. They sold better tools for half the price of our imperial goods. The Zelonians stopped buying from our merchants. More red dots appeared. On Krasta 7, humans helped the locals build new farms. Food production increased by 300%. Now the Krastans say they don't need our food shipments anymore. The Emperor's anger grew with each report. And the worst offense? The Torvin system, Your Majesty. The humans convinced all 5 planets to declare independence from the Empire. They said they would rather trade freely with humans than pay our taxes. Silence filled the Great Hall. Never before had entire systems simply walked away from the Empire. The idea was impossible to believe, yet it had happened. General Vex, a creature with too many teeth and glowing green skin, spoke up. The humans are dangerous, my lord. They spread ideas about freedom and choice. These ideas are like a virus among our subject species. Emperor Valdris stood up. His massive form cast shadows across the room. How many ships do these humans have? Our scouts report about 15,000 vessels, scattered across their small territory, Korath replied. Most are trading ships or small colony vessels. They have perhaps 2,000 actual warships. The Emperor laughed, a sound like grinding. Metal. 15,000 ships? We have over 1 million vessels in our fleet. These humans are either very stupid or very confident. Admiral Korath nodded. That is what concerns me, Your Majesty. No species with only 15,000 ships should act so boldly against the Empire. Either they are fools or they know something we do not. It does not matter, Valdris declared. Fools or not, they will learn to respect the Empire. How long would it take to crush their pathetic fleet? With the 3rd Imperial Fleet, we could destroy them in a matter of hours, Korath answered. 200,000 of our best warships against their tiny force. It would not even be a real battle. The Emperor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Then do it. Take the 3rd Fleet to their home system. Give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, destroy their planet and everyone on it. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Empire. Far away from Nexus Prime, on a space station orbiting Earth's moon, Commander Lee Dojin watched the stars through a large window. His uniform was simple and blue, nothing like the fancy clothes of Imperial officers. He was drinking coffee from a plain cup when his aide walked in. Sir, we have a situation, Lieutenant Parksamine said. She looked worried, but there was something else in her eyes that looked almost like excitement. What kind of situation? Lee asked, though he already knew the answer. They had been expecting this day for years. Long-range sensors are picking up a massive fleet entering the outer edge of our solar system. The computer estimates about 200,000 ships. Lee nodded and walked to his command chair. Around him, other officers went about their duties with calm efficiency. No one seemed panicked or afraid. Any identification? He asked. Imperial 3rd Fleet, Salman replied. Admiral Korath commanding. They're broadcasting a message on all frequencies. Put it on the main screen. The image of Admiral Korath appeared on the wall. His blue face was serious and threatening. Attention, human government. This is Admiral Korath of the Imperial 3rd Fleet. By order of Emperor Valdris, you have 72, Standard hours to surrender unconditionally to the Galactic Empire. Koreth's image grew larger and more intimidating. You will submit to Imperial law immediately. Your military forces will stand down. Your planets will accept Imperial governors. Your people will become subjects of the Empire. The Admiral's voice became harder. If you refuse these terms, we will commence orbital bombardment of your homeworld. Every city will burn. Every human will die. This is your only warning. The message ended, leaving the command center in silence. Lieutenant Park looked at her. Commander. Sir, what are your orders? Lee Dojin leaned back in his chair. A smile slowly spread across his face. Then he began to chuckle. The chuckle became a laugh. Soon he was laughing so hard that tears ran down his cheeks. Sir? Park asked, confused. Summon, record a message for broadcast to the Imperial fleet. Also send copies to every human colony, every trade partner, and every free planet and known. Space. Recording, sir. Lee stood up and straightened his uniform. His laugh faded, but his smile remained. When he spoke, his voice was calm and confident. Admiral Koreth, this is Commander Lee Dojin of the Terran Defense Force. We have received your ultimatum and appreciate the advance notice. 72 hours should be just enough time for us to prepare a proper welcome. He paused, his smile growing wider. We decline your generous offer to become slaves. Instead, we invite you to discover why no intelligent species has ever successfully invaded a human system. Lee looked directly into the camera. You've brought 200,000 ships to our home. That's impressive. We're curious to see how many you'll take back with you. The message continued with perfect politeness. Please be advised that our defensive preparations are now active. We recommend your fleet maintain safe distances from all planetary bodies, space stations, and asteroid fields for your own safety. Lee's smile became a grin. Oh, and Admiral, you might want to check on your home systems while you're here. We'd hate for you to miss anything important happening back on Nexus Prime. The recording ended. Park stared at her commander. Sir, should I really send this? Send it everywhere, Lee confirmed. And Soman? Send a coded message to Colonial Command. Tell them it's time for Phase 2. As the message went out across the galaxy, Lee looked through the window at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, the Imperial fleet was preparing to attack Earth. They thought they were about to crush a small, weak species that had gotten too confident. They had no idea that they had just walked into the largest trap in galactic history. On worlds across human space, colonists received the message and smiled the same knowing smile as their commander. On hidden bases in Empty Star, systems human fleets powered up their engines and prepared to move. The Galactic Empire had mobilized its fleet to crush humanity, but humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. While the Empire gathered its ships for one massive attack, humans had quietly spread across the galaxy like seeds in the wind. Now those seeds were about to bloom into something the Empire had never seen before. Lee Dojin sat back in his command chair and waited. In 72 hours, the galaxy was about to learn why humans always smiled when someone threatened their home. Space around Earth began to shimmer like water in the sunlight. Admiral Koreth watched his sensors with growing alarm as impossible readings filled his screens. Energy levels that should have torn apart entire planets pulsed through the human solar system. What are they doing? He demanded. His science officer, a pale creature with too many eyes, stammered as he read his instruments. Admiral, the humans appear to be manipulating quantum fields on a massive scale. The energy output is beyond anything in our records. Koreth had seen many weapons in his long military career. Planet-killing lasers, gravity bombs that could crush moons, viral weapons that destroyed entire species. But he had never seen anything that bent space itself. Is it some kind of shield, he asked. Unknown, sir. But the quantum distortions are growing stronger. Space itself is becoming unstable around their positions. On Luna Command, Lee Dojin gave the final order. Wildfire Control, you are authorized to activate all quantum tunnels. Bring our people home. Throughout the solar system, hundreds of hidden devices came to life. They had been disguised as mining equipment, research sensors, and communication relays. But their real purpose was far more ambitious than the Empire could imagine. Chief Engineer Yoon Nari pressed the activation key. Quantum tunnels opening now. All stations report successful connections. Space exploded with light. Where Imperial sensors had detected empty space, massive human warships began to appear. They didn't fly in from distant locations. They simply materialized from quantum-folded space like ghosts becoming solid. Admiral Koreth watched in horror as his tactical display filled with new contacts. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of human vessels appeared around his fleet. "Count," he shouted. "Still counting, Admiral," his sensor officer replied, his voice shaking. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. The numbers kept climbing. Where Koreth had expected to fight 15,000 human ships, he now faced an armada that rivaled his own. 400,000 vessels and still appearing. The sensor officer finally reported. "Admiral, they've surrounded us completely." Captain Kim Jun-ho smiled as his disguised mining platform transformed into a heavy battleship. Around him, similar transformations took place throughout the asteroid belt. What the Empire had catalogued as civilian infrastructure revealed itself as the largest military deception in galactic history. "All weapons online," his gunner reported. "We have target locks on 12 Imperial cruisers. Hold fire," Jun-ho ordered. "Wait for the signal." Similar scenes played out on hundreds of human vessels. For 50 years, humanity had been building this fleet in secret. While Imperial spies watched Earth's shipyards, the real construction had taken place in hidden facilities throughout human space. Admiral Koreth tried to understand what he was seeing. How is this possible? Our intelligence reports showed only 15,000 human ships. His intelligence officer looked sick. "Sir, we may have been watching decoy vessels. These ships appearing now, they don't match any designs in our files." The Admiral stared at his screens. The human fleet wasn't just larger than expected. It was completely different. These weren't the simple trading vessels and colony ships his scouts had observed. These were purpose-built warships with technology his experts couldn't identify. On Earth's command vessel, Captain Han Min-jae opened communications to the Imperial fleet. "Admiral Koreth, this is Captain Han of the Terran Defense Force. As you can see, we've prepared a proper reception for your visit." Koreth's image appeared on Han's screen. The Imperial Admiral looked shocked and angry. "What is the meaning of this? Where did these ships come from?" "They've been here all along," Han replied calmly. "We simply kept them in storage until needed. Quantum-folded space is very convenient for hiding large objects." "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected them," Han smiled. "Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. While you were counting our decoy fleet, our real navy was preparing for your arrival." The revelation was staggering. Everything the Empire knew about human military strength had been a carefully orchestrated lie. The species they thought was weak and defenseless had been planning this moment for decades, but the real shock was yet to come. "Admiral," Han continued, "I believe you received a message from Commander Lim earlier. Perhaps you'd like to speak with him again." The screen split, showing both Captain Han and Commander Lim Tae-hyun. But now Koreth could see what was behind. Lim, the unmistakable cityscape of Nexus Prime, the Imperial capital. "Hello again, Admiral," Lim said cheerfully. "I hope you don't mind, but we've made ourselves at home here. Your Emperor has been very accommodating." Koreth's voice was barely a whisper. "What have you done?" "What you should have expected," Lim replied. "While you brought your fleet to attack our home, we brought our fleet to visit yours." The screen changed to show the space around Nexus Prime. Dozens of human warships hung in orbit around the Imperial capital, their weapons trained on the planet's surface. "But that's impossible," Koreth protested. "You couldn't have reached Nexus Prime before us. We took the fastest route through hyperspace." Captain Han laughed. "Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of hyperspace travel. That's so slow and limited. We prefer quantum tunneling." The explanation hit Koreth like a physical blow. Quantum tunneling, the theoretical ability to move instantly across any distance by folding space itself. Imperial scientists had studied it for centuries but never made it practical. The energy requirements alone, Koreth stammered. Are enormous, yes, Han agreed. But humans are very good at solving engineering problems. We've been working on this technology since we first learned about the Empire. Lim's image smiled. Admiral, perhaps you're wondering about your other fleet positions. I'm happy to report that human forces have arrived at all major Imperial worlds. We're currently accepting surrenders from your garrison commanders. More screens activated around the Imperial bridge. Each one showed a human commander speaking from orbit around a different Imperial world. Koreth recognized the planets, major military bases, industrial centers, population centers, the heart of the Empire. This is Captain Lee from Krath Station. The orbital defense platforms have surrendered without a fight. Commander Park reporting from Velen Prime. The Imperial Governor has agreed to peaceful transition of authority. Major Kim at Zorak 7. Local Imperial forces are cooperating fully with our occupation. One by one, reports came in from across the Empire. While Koreth's fleet had been traveling to Earth, human forces had appeared at every major Imperial installation simultaneously. You've invaded the entire Empire at once, Koreth realized. Invaded is such an ugly word, Han replied. We prefer liberated. You'll find that most of your subject species are quite happy to see us. Commander Lim nodded. The Zilonians were especially enthusiastic. Something about better prices on farming equipment, I believe. Koreth's mind reeled. This wasn't just a military defeat. It was the complete collapse of everything he had believed about Imperial strength. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 8 centuries through superior numbers and technology. Now a species they had dismissed as primitive had outmaneuvered them completely. What do you want? He asked. Captain Han's expression became serious. Admiral, we want what every intelligent species wants. Freedom. The right to live our lives without bowing to distant emperors. The right to trade fairly with our neighbors. The right to explore the galaxy without asking permission. He paused, looking directly at Koreth. And we want the same rights for every other species in the galaxy. Your empire has enslaved billions of beings for centuries. That ends today. Lim's voice joined from Nexus Prime. Admiral, your emperor is currently enjoying the hospitality of a secure location. He'll be well treated while awaiting trial for his crimes against the galaxy's population. Koreth felt the weight of 800 years of Imperial history crashing down around him. The mighty Galactic Empire, ruler of nearly 1,000 worlds, had been brought down in a single day by a species that had only reached the stars a century ago. You're offering us surrender terms? He asked. We're offering you a choice, Han replied. You can order your fleet to stand down and return to Imperial space under safe conduct. Any personnel who wish to defect to the Commonwealth will be welcome, or... He didn't need to finish the sentence. 400,000 human warships surrounded the Imperial fleet. The choice was simple: surrender or face annihilation. Admiral Koreth looked around his bridge at officers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades. They looked back at him with confusion, fear, and the dawning realization that their world had changed forever. The Empire had mobilized its fleet to crush humanity. Instead, humanity had crushed the Empire. The Imperial Third Fleet moved through space like a dark cloud. 200,000 warships arranged in perfect battle formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. Admiral Koreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human solar system grow larger on his screens. Report, he commanded. We are approaching Jupiter's orbit, Admiral, his navigation officer replied. The human defensive fleet is taking position around their inner planets. Koreth studied the tactical display. The human ships looked tiny compared to his massive fleet. 15,000 vessels spread out in what appeared to be a standard defensive pattern. Some ships guarded Earth, others protected Mars and the asteroid belt mining stations. Primitive but adequate, Koreth muttered. They understand basic military tactics at least. His weapons officer, a creature with 4 arms and red eyes, looked up from his console. Admiral, the humans are moving their civilian ships away from the battle zone. They're evacuating their outer colonies. Smart, Koreth admitted. They know they cannot win, so they try to save who they can. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The Imperial fleet continued its advance. Korath had fought many battles in his long career. He had seen species surrender immediately when they saw the Empire's power. He had seen others fight bravely, but uselessly against impossible odds. The humans seemed to be choosing the second option. On Mars Defense Platform 7, Captain Kim Junho watched the approaching Imperial fleet through his telescope. The enemy ships filled space like stars, more vessels than most species had ever seen in one place. "Impressive," he said to his communications officer. "They really brought everything they had." "Sir, shouldn't we be worried?" the young officer asked. Junho smiled. "Son, my grandfather used to tell me stories about old Earth wars. He said the most dangerous moment for any army was when the enemy looked exactly where you wanted them to look." The captain activated his secure communication system. "All stations, this is Mars 7, report status." One by one, hidden bases throughout the solar system reported in. To Imperial sensors, they looked like normal mining operations and research stations. The Empire's scouts had cataloged them months ago and dismissed them as harmless civilian installations. They were very wrong. Deep in the asteroid belt, Chief Engineer Yoon Nari put the finishing touches on what humans called Project Wildfire. The device looked simple enough, just a metal sphere covered in glowing circuits. But this sphere was connected to hundreds of others hidden throughout the solar system. "Quantum tunnel generators are online," she reported to her team. "All systems show green. We're ready for activation on your command." Her assistant, a young man named Ko Minsu, looked nervous. "Chief, are you sure this will work? The calculations are incredible if we're wrong." Nari laughed. "Minsu, humans have been doing incredible things since we learned to make fire. Today we're just thinking a little bigger." She activated her communicator. "Command, this is Wildfire Control. All quantum gates are armed and ready. We can open the tunnels on 30 seconds notice." Back on Luna Command, Lee Dojin received confirmations from hidden stations across the solar system. Every asteroid mining ship was actually a disguised weapons platform. Every research station was really a military base. Every civilian transport was carrying soldiers instead of cargo. For 50 years, since first contact with the Empire, humanity had been preparing for this moment. While Imperial spies watched human colonies and counted human ships, they missed the greatest military buildup in galactic history. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported, "Admiral Korath is demanding our surrender. He says this is our final chance." Lee looked at the time display. 67 hours since the ultimatum began. The Imperial fleet was exactly where human planners wanted them to be. "Tell the Admiral we need 5 more minutes to consider his generous offer," Lee said, "and patch me through to Colonial Command." The communication went out on quantum channels the Empire didn't even know existed. In hidden bases across human space, commanders received the same message. "Phase 2 is go. Repeat, Phase 2 is go. On bay." The bridge of his flagship, Admiral Korath, was getting impatient. How long do these humans need to make a simple decision? Surrender or die? It should not require much thought. His sensor officer suddenly looked up from his console. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy readings throughout the human system. The patterns don't match any known weapons." "What kind of energy?" Korath demanded. "I don't know, sir. The readings are off our charts. It's like space itself is bending." Korath frowned. These humans continued to surprise him. First, their confident response to his ultimatum. Now, unknown energy signatures that his best scientists couldn't identify. "Could it be some kind of new weapon?" he asked. "Unknown, Admiral. But the energy levels are enormous. Whatever they're doing, it's using more power than most planets generate." On Earth's primary command vessel, Captain Han Minjae watched his crew prepare for the most important battle in human history. Around him, officers worked with quiet efficiency that came from years of practice. "Navigator Jang, confirm all coordinates," Minjae ordered. "All quantum tunnel exit points confirmed, sir," Navigator Jang Yeji replied. "We have clear paths to every target system." Weapons Officer. "Oh, status report." Weapons Officer. Oh Seungjun checked his displays. "All systems armed and ready, Captain. Quantum torpedoes loaded. Phase cannons at full power. We're ready for anything. Minji nodded. In a few minutes, the Empire was about to discover that humans had learned things from studying Imperial technology, things the Empire never intended to teach. Communications. Open a channel to all hidden fleet positions. Throughout the solar system, invisible to Imperial sensors, 400,000 human warships waited in quantum-shifted space. They existed in the same location as normal space, but slightly out of phase. Imperial sensors saw empty space while human weapons prepared to fire. This is Captain Han to all vessels, Minji broadcast. Prepare for quantum shift in 60 seconds. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth today. We're fighting for every species that wants to be free. Admiral Korath was studying the strange energy readings when his communications officer interrupted. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's not from Earth. Where is it coming from? That's impossible to determine, sir. The signal seems to be coming from everywhere at once. The main screen activated, showing the image of a human officer Korath had never seen before. The man wore a different uniform and stood on a bridge that looked nothing like the Earth ships Korath had been watching. Greetings, Admiral Korath, the human said calmly. My name is Commander Lim Taehyun of the Human Expeditionary Force. While you've been visiting our neighborhood, we thought we'd return the favor. The image changed to show the view outside Lim's ship. Korath's blood turned cold. In the background was a planet he knew very well. Nexus Prime, capital of the Galactic Empire. Beautiful capital world you have here. Lim continued with a polite smile. Would be a shame if something happened to it. Korath stared in shock. How was this possible? His fleet was the fastest in the Empire. They had traveled directly from Nexus Prime to the human system. No human ship could have reached the Imperial capital before them. That's impossible, he whispered. Many things are impossible, Admiral, Lim replied, somehow hearing him. Until humans decide to do them anyway. I suggest you check with your home systems. You might be surprised by what you find. The transmission ended, leaving Korath staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers looked just as confused and worried. Communications, contact Nexus Prime immediately, Korath ordered. I'm trying, sir, but all channels are being jammed. Korath's hands began to shake. In all his years of service, he had never encountered anything like this. How had humans reached the Imperial capital? What were they doing there? And most importantly, how many other impossible things were the humans about to do? The Imperial Palace on Nexus Prime had never seen anything like this. For 800 years, alien ambassadors had knelt before the Golden Throne, begging for mercy or offering tribute. Today, human soldiers walked through the great halls as if they owned them. Colonel Song Minji led her strike team through corridors lined with priceless art stolen from 1,000 worlds. Her boots clicked against marble floors that had been polished by slave labor for centuries. Behind her, a dozen human Marines followed with weapons ready but not threatening. Remember, she told her team, we're here to arrest criminals, not destroy history. Try not to break anything that belongs in a museum. They reached the throne room doors, each one 10 meters tall and covered in gold. 2 Imperial guards stood at attention, their weapons lowered. They had already received orders from their commanders to cooperate with the human forces. Song nodded to them politely. Gentlemen, we're here for Emperor Valdris. Is he receiving visitors today? One guard, a tall creature with blue skin and too many arms, gestured toward the doors. The Emperor awaits you inside, Colonel. The doors opened with a sound like thunder. Inside, Emperor Valdris sat on his throne surrounded by his remaining court officials. He looked exactly like what he was, an ancient tyrant who had never imagined this day would come. Song walked across the vast floor, her small human form dwarfed by the enormous room. But she moved with confidence that made her seem larger than any of the aliens watching her. Your Imperial Majesty, she said with mock formality, you're under arrest for crimes against approximately 47 different species. You have the right to remain silent, though I suspect you won't use it. Valdris stood up from his throne, his massive form towering over the human colonel. You dare enter my palace and threaten me? I am Emperor of the Galaxy. We're Emperor, Song corrected. Past tense. As of today, the Galactic Empire no longer exists. You're being replaced by something better. Around the throne room, Imperial officials watched in shock. Some seemed frightened, others angry, but many looked almost relieved. They had served the Empire because they had no choice. Now they had an alternative. Meanwhile, similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human forces had appeared at every major Imperial world, but they hadn't come as destroyers. They came as liberators with carefully prepared plans for peaceful transition. On Krath Station, Captain Lee Dogen accepted the surrender of the Orbital Defense Commander. Your cooperation is appreciated, Commander Vec. Your garrison will be treated well, and any who wish to join the Commonwealth forces will be welcome. Commander Vec, a reptilian creature with green scales, looked confused. You're not executing us? Why would we do that? Lee asked. Most of you were just following orders. We're here to change the system, not punish everyone who worked in it. The human approach was completely different from anything the galaxy had seen before. When the Empire conquered worlds, they installed new governors and executed the old leadership. When humans took control, they offered choices. On Velen Prime, Commander Park Soman met with the Imperial governor in his palace. The governor, a worried-looking alien with gray skin and large eyes, had expected to be dragged away in chains. Instead, Park sat across from him at his own conference table and offered him tea. Governor Nexal, she said, you have 3 options. First, you can retire with a full pension and live peacefully on any world you choose. Second, you can help us transition this world to self-governance. Third, you can face trial for any crimes you may have committed. Nexal stared at her. You're giving me choices? Everyone deserves choices, Park replied. That's what this war was about, giving people the right to choose their own future. The governor thought for a moment. What would happen to the people of this world under your Commonwealth? They would govern themselves, Park explained. We would provide protection and trade opportunities, but they would make their own decisions about how to live. It was a revolutionary concept. For centuries, the Empire had ruled through fear and force. The humans offered something the galaxy had almost forgotten: hope. Back on Nexus Prime, Colonel Song was explaining the situation to Emperor Valdris. Your empire is finished, she told him. Not destroyed, transformed. Every world that wants independence will get it. Every species that wants freedom will have it. Valdris's 6 eyes burned with rage. You cannot simply dissolve an empire that has lasted 8 centuries. Watch us, Song replied calmly. We've already done it. Your fleet commanders are surrendering across the galaxy. Your governors are cooperating with Commonwealth forces. Your subjects are celebrating in the streets. She was right. On world after world, species that had been enslaved for generations were learning they were free. The celebrations were visible from orbit. On Zelen Prime, the native population gathered in their capital city's main square. They had been forced to sell their goods to Imperial merchants at unfair prices for decades. Now they could trade freely with humans and anyone else they chose. Elder Zek, the oldest Zelonian on the planet, spoke to the crowd. Today we are no longer subjects. Today we choose our own path. Similar celebrations happened on dozens of worlds. Species that had never been allowed to govern themselves were suddenly free to try. It was chaotic, uncertain, and wonderful. In the Sol system, Admiral Korath faced the hardest decision of his military career. His fleet was surrounded and outnumbered. His emperor was captured. His empire was crumbling in real time. Major General Beijiwan, commanding the human forces around the Imperial fleet, opened a communication channel. Admiral Korath, I know this is difficult for you. You've served the Empire loyally for many years, but the Empire you served is gone. The question now is what comes next. Korath's bridge was silent. His officers looked to him for guidance, but he had no idea what to tell them. What are you offering? He asked. Safe passage for any Imperial personnel who want to return to their homeworlds, Bay replied. Full pardons for military personnel who are following orders, and for those who want something different, a place in the Commonwealth Defense Force. You would trust former Imperial officers? Admiral, the Commonwealth believes in redemption. We judge people by their actions, not their past affiliations. Some of our best officers are former Imperial defectors. It was true. Over the past decades, thousands of Imperial citizens had quietly defected to human space. They brought valuable intelligence and skills, but more importantly, they brought hope for a different kind of future. Bay continued. However, we are keeping Emperor Valdris and his closest associates. They will face trial for their crimes, genocide, slavery, and oppression of billions of beings. Justice demands an accounting. Korath understood. The Empire had committed terrible crimes over the centuries. Someone had to answer for them. And if I order my fleet to fight? He asked. Bay's tone became sad but firm. Then we will defend ourselves. Admiral, you have brave soldiers under your command. Don't throw their lives away for an empire that no longer exists. Around the bridge, Korath's officers waited for his decision. These were good people who had served their empire faithfully. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle for a dead cause. All ships, Korath broadcast to his fleet, stand down weapons and prepare to return to Imperial space under human escort. The war is over. Some ships complied immediately. Others took longer, their captains struggling to accept the new reality. But gradually, the entire Imperial Third Fleet powered down their weapons and submitted to human authority. On Nexus Prime, Emperor Valdris was escorted from his palace by human guards. For the first time in 800 years, he was not the most powerful being in the room. The experience was terrifying and humbling. "Where are you taking me?" he demanded. Colonel Song walked beside him as they moved through corridors filled with liberated slaves and former subjects. "To Earth, your former majesty. You'll be held there while we prepare for your trial." "Trial for what? I am emperor. Everything I did was within my rights." "That's the problem," Song replied. "You thought being emperor gave you the right to enslave entire species. The galaxy disagrees." As they walked, Valdris saw something that shook him more than any threat could. The palace servants, beings who had been forced to serve him for decades, were not cowering in fear or crying over his capture. They were smiling. For the first time in his long life, Emperor Valdris began to understand that he had been wrong about everything. The Galactic Empire was dead. In its place, something new was being born, a commonwealth based on freedom, choice, and cooperation instead of fear and domination. The humans had not just won a war. They had started a revolution that would change the galaxy forever. 6 months after what historians would call the 48-hour war, the galaxy looked completely different. Where once the Golden Palace of Emperor Valdris had stood as a symbol of tyranny, now the Commonwealth Assembly Building rose as a beacon of hope. The building was designed by architects from 12 different species, each contributing their unique understanding of beauty and function. Unlike the Imperial Palace with its gold and stolen treasures, the Assembly Building was made of simple materials that represented cooperation rather than conquest. Former Emperor Valdris sat in his comfortable prison cell on Earth, writing in a journal with his 6 hands. The cell was larger and better furnished than the homes most of his former subjects had been allowed. He had a bed, a desk, books to read, and 3 meals a day. It was more mercy than he had ever shown anyone. "I still do not understand," he wrote, "how my mighty empire fell to these humans. We had superior numbers, superior technology, superior experience, yet they defeated us in 2 days." He paused, remembering the confident smile on Colonel Song's face when she arrested him. Perhaps the answer lies not in what they had, but in what we lacked. We had ships and weapons. They had ideas. Down the hall from Valdris, former Admiral Korath worked in the prison library, helping other former Imperial officers understand the new reality. Many had chosen to serve their sentences on Earth rather than return to worlds that no longer welcomed their presence. The humans offered us something we never expected, Korath told a group of younger officers. They offered us the chance to be better than we were. Outside the prison, the real work of building a new galaxy continued. In the Commonwealth Assembly, Ambassador Lee Sujin stood before representatives from 87 different species. Some had been part of the old empire. Others were newly independent worlds, and a few were species that had been hiding from imperial attention for centuries. The question before us today, she said, is not how to replace the empire with another empire. The question is how to build something that has never existed before, a galaxy where every species has the right to choose its own destiny, the CEO. Zilonian Representative Elder Mech raised one of his forearms. Ambassador Lee, many of us have known only imperial rule for generations. How do we learn to govern ourselves? Lee smiled. The same way humans learned, Elder Mech. By making mistakes, learning from them, and trying again. The Commonwealth will provide advice and support, but the decisions must be yours. It was a radical idea. For 800 years, the galaxy had been ruled from the top down. Now humans were proposing something that seemed impossible, government from the bottom up. Representative Kara from the Krasta system spoke next. What if some worlds choose to remain isolated? What if they don't? Want to join your Commonwealth? Then that's their choice, Lee replied. Freedom means the right to say no as much as the right to say yes. Any world that wants to be left alone will be left alone. This answer surprised many in the assembly. The Empire had never accepted the right of any world to refuse imperial authority, but humans seemed to mean what they said about freedom. In another part of the building, President Kim Ji-soo of Earth met with former imperial governors who had chosen to help with the transition. Governor Nexal, who had once ruled Velen Prime with fear, now worked as an advisor on administrative procedures. President Kim, he said, I have studied your Commonwealth Charter. There are no provisions for forcing compliance with Commonwealth decisions. How will you maintain order? Kim leaned back in her chair. Governor, the Empire maintained order through fear. People obeyed because they were afraid of punishment. We maintain order through cooperation. People follow Commonwealth guidelines because they helped create them. But what if someone refuses to cooperate? Then we try to understand why, Kim replied. Maybe our guidelines are wrong. Maybe we need to change our approach. Or maybe that species needs something different from what we're offering. The conversation was interrupted by an aide who brought news that made Kim smile. Madam President, the Torvin system has just voted to establish its own democratic government. They're asking for Commonwealth observers to monitor their first elections. This was happening across the galaxy. Species that had been slaves for centuries were choosing their own leaders for the first time. Some experiments failed, some succeeded, but all were learning what freedom meant. On Mars, Captain Kim Jun-ho, now promoted to admiral, oversaw the transformation of the old imperial military. Many former imperial officers had chosen to join the MAR, Commonwealth Defense Force, bringing valuable experience to the new organization. The hardest part, he told his staff, is teaching people that strength comes from protecting others, not conquering them. Commander Vec, the former Imperial Defense commander who had surrendered Krath Station, now served as Jun-ho's deputy. Admiral, my old Imperial training taught me that the purpose of military force was to expand the Empire. What is the purpose of Commonwealth force? To make sure everyone can choose their own purpose, Jun-ho replied. We defend species that can't defend themselves. We stop those who try to build new empires. We keep the peace so that freedom can flourish. It was a new concept of military service, and it attracted beings from across the galaxy who were tired of endless conquest and oppression. Back in the Commonwealth Assembly, the day's session was ending with a speech by President Kim. She stood at the podium, looking out at representatives from dozens of worlds. 6 months ago, the Galactic Empire mobilized its fleet to force humanity into submission. They expected us to surrender or be destroyed. Instead, they discovered something they had forgotten during 8 centuries of rule. She paused, her words carrying to every world in Commonwealth space. They discovered that free peoples are stronger than enslaved peoples, that cooperation accomplishes more than conquest, that hope is more powerful than fear. The assembly erupted in applause from beings who had never been allowed to express approval of their own government before. Kim continued when the noise died down. The Empire mobilized their fleet expecting conquest. They found revolution instead. Not because humans are the strongest or the smartest, but because we understood something the Empire forgot. She looked directly at the camera that broadcast her words across the galaxy. True strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build. Not from the ability to conquer, but from the courage to liberate. In his prison cell, former Emperor Valdris watched the speech on his small television. Despite everything, he found himself nodding along with some of Kim's words. Perhaps, he wrote in his journal, I was wrong about strength. I thought it came from making others fear you. These humans seem to believe it comes from helping others. Trust you? He paused, thinking about the revolution that had destroyed his empire in 2 days. When I sent Admiral Korath to destroy the humans, I expected to prove imperial superiority. Instead, I proved human superiority. Not superior weapons or ships, superior ideas. The speech ended with Kim announcing the next phase of Commonwealth development. Today, I am proud to announce that 47 former imperial worlds have voted to establish the Galactic Commonwealth Council. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species will share equal authority in governing interstellar affairs. The camera pulled back to show the Commonwealth flag being raised over the assembly building. It showed not a single species or world, but a spiral galaxy with stars of different colors representing the diversity of Commonwealth membership. Admiral Korath, watching from the prison common room, turned to his fellow former officers. Do you see what we missed? We thought the galaxy belonged to whoever was strongest. The humans understood that the galaxy belongs to everyone who lives in it. Outside Earth's atmosphere, human and alien ships worked together to build new space stations that would serve as Commonwealth regional headquarters. On the construction sites, beings who had been enemies 6 months ago now labored side by side. Chief Engineer Yoon Nari, who had designed the quantum tunnel system that made human victory possible, now led teams building civilian infrastructure instead of weapons. It's amazing, she told her mixed species crew, how much you can accomplish when you're building something instead of destroying it. The final scene took place in the Commonwealth Assembly chambers as the day's session ended. Representatives from across the galaxy filed out, talking excitedly about the future they were creating together. Ambassador Lee Sujin stayed behind, looking up at the high ceiling where the flags of 87 different worlds hung in a circle. Each flag was different, representing the unique culture and values of its people. We did it, she whispered to herself. We actually did it. President Kim joined her, following her gaze to the flags above. What's next? Kim asked. Lee smiled. Now we prove that freedom works better than tyranny. That cooperation accomplishes more than conquest. That beings who choose to work together can build wonders that no empire could ever imagine. Outside the building, the lights of the Commonwealth capital stretched to the horizon. Ships from 100 worlds came and went, carrying trade goods, cultural exchanges, and new ideas to every corner of the galaxy. The Galactic Empire had lasted 800 years by making beings afraid to dream of something better.